Will the felons' new tariffs cause a recession? Will there be big protests for the felon to resign? Protests that even include Republicans demanding his resignation? The student loan debacle, will this lead to massive defaults on student loans? Will secret communications between Netanyahu and the felon be revealed? And what is the health of the felon's administration? Let's look into all that. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First off, a huge thank you to everybody who likes, watches, shares, comments on the videos. If you're subscribed to the channel, a huge, huge thank you. If you watch the videos but you're not subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you hit the subscription button. It doesn't cost anything. It just helps the algorithm put the videos out to more people. If you've given money to the channel, a big, big, big thank you. Okay, so let's get started with these tariffs. So I'm recording this shortly after the tariffs were announced on Tuesday. So we'll look into why they're doing it too, because I have some ideas there. But so he says he's putting America first, and he's going to tax everything 10% as it comes across the border into the US, which means that consumers basically are going to pay 10% more for everything. What would tariffs cause a recession? See the Five of Cups in the water, which is about loss. In this case, I think it's a loss of financial stability. We get the Four of Wands at the foundation. This is the voters. So it's all about the voters. It's about the people, the citizenry. The challenge for these tariffs to come across positively to the voters is that they know the truth already. People aren't that naive. Most people understand that a tariff is a tax. It's a matter of who pays it. And you can say all you want that it's going to be paid for by the companies that are making the goods, but it's not. They're not going to lower their profit margins, especially on things that are essential that they know we have to buy. You know, years ago during COVID, all the soda companies raised their prices, right? And they said they're raising their prices because the packaging for the cans for the soda and for the bottles for the soda had gone way up. And about 2 years after that, PepsiCo reported really good profits. And they said, oh, yeah, we're making a lot more money because the packaging of the soda prices have gone way down. But they didn't lower the soda price. Once we get used to paying a price, it doesn't generally come down unless we demand it comes down by not purchasing it. So my point is that the companies want to keep their same profit margin. They're not going to just magically keep the same price and pay a 10% tax. It's not going to happen, especially if they think the consumers will pay the 10%. We get the Queen of Swords underneath, logical thinking about this. Confinement, being trapped in the past. This, unfortunately, is the decisions that he's already made. The consumers already feel trapped by his economy. There's things behind the scenes that we can't see. And this, I think, has to do with why they're wanting to impose these tariffs. We'll get into that in just a second. Here's the Five of Cups I was seeing in the water, and it comes in the near-term outcome. This is loss. This is the economy starting to suffer. And when the economy suffers on a macro level, it means that individuals are hurt at various different levels depending upon your economic status, but generally the poorest of us are the ones that are hurt the most. With the Three of Swords, heartache. People just completely upset, not being able to afford their their bills in the same way, like needing to make choices between, uh, maybe not paying the phone bill this month and but paying the electric bill, and then maybe not paying the electric bill next month, but paying the phone bill. People are going to be put in these situations. It's going to get kind of ugly for a while. The good news is I do think things improve. So um towards the end of the summer, like I've always said, we get the moon card, things coming to the surface. This is the voters rising. We kind of already saw that in the special elections in Florida and in the Supreme Court election in Wisconsin. But the voters start to rise up and make their voices heard. We get temperance in the hopes and fears. The hope is that they start to moderate these things and maybe pull back some of the tariffs and hope that the retaliatory tariffs also get pulled back, because the tariffs that other countries impose on the United States is a burden to the manufacturers here, because again, they have to raise their prices over and wherever they're selling their goods because it's been taxed as they go in. And all the companies are going to play this game of like, how much should we raise prices by to maximize our profits? And they have really good people that work on those problems. And the answer is not the answer is definitely not going to be they're not going to raise their prices at all. Whether they raise them the full 10%, we'll see, or whatever the tariff happens to be on that particular product. We get the courts. This might even be the world courts, the World Trade Organization looking into this as well on whether it's not violating some existing world trade laws. We get the Empress, of course, Russia's behind it. That's four major arcanas in a row, too. There's a lot of energy behind this in the outcome. And we get the Queen of Cups, empathy and compassion, people understanding how much these tariffs are hurting their fellow citizens. Underneath, we get the seeds being planted. They were planted before the election, so we really shouldn't be surprised he's doing it. He said he was going to do it. We get the card for the Democrats, though. The Democrats are going to fight as hard as they can. Whether they're successful or not is a different story. So will the tariffs cause a recession? In the short term, absolutely. They're going to cause a recession. Will it be a long lasting effect? I think it depends on what the next moves are. So that's why it's important that, we keep protesting, we keep going to town halls, we keep being loud, we keep getting our voices heard so that perhaps the next steps aren't as dramatic. Because if other countries retaliate with their own tariffs and then he raises his tariffs and then they raise them back, it's then we get a trade war, and that's going to make nobody win at all. Well, nobody's going to win at all, period. But so the student loan debacle, I don't know if this has been kind of an underreported story, but if you have student loans, you probably know about it. So they got rid of some of the income-driven repayment programs. So you used to pay your student loans, it would be for a long time, I don't know what it is now, but for a long time, it was like 15% of your discretionary spending was at most how big your student loan payment can be. I think that's gone. People have been reporting that their student loan payments have doubled and tripled. So, and of course, they're trying to eliminate the Department of Education. And apparently, the Small Business Administration is going to take over the administration of student loans, which at one time, I don't know if this is still true, the Small Business Administration was where the most governmental fraud was. So, doesn't seem like a very wise choice but so will the student loan repayment confusion and eliminating income-based repayment programs, getting rid of student loan forgiveness in some instances, will this cause major defaults? Now, while the government can come and garnish your wages for not paying your student loans, you know, if a hearing is held and the person tells the judge, hey, I'm not paying my student loans because if I pay my student loans, I can't pay my house payment or my rent payment. I don't think the judge is going to feel too empathetic towards the government. So decisions are going to have to be made on how money is being spent for people whose student loan payments suddenly go up. The challenge is it just happened so quickly. Like there was no anticipation. It used to be your student loan payment was set for 12 months. You'd fill out another form and then it was set for 12 months. This is the way it worked when I had student loans. Um, and it was very consistent. It was very easy to predict what your student loan payment was going to be. People feel wounded. There's a lot of swords energy. So there's a lot of like ping pong inside your head going back and forth of how do I handle this situation? People feel very wounded. In the past, we had the Biden administration, which was fantastic on student loans for those of people that had student loans. Now, if you don't have student loans, you might think differently. But now it's just a bunch of burdens that have to be carried and unexpected burdens too. You know, the good thing is with the Ten of Wands is it generally means that the cycle will come to an end fairly quickly. We'll have to see. In the near term future, we get a lot of fighting, the Five of Wands. I think we'll see a lot of protesting from people that have student loans. I think they're going to join the resistance in massive numbers, and not all of them are Democrats. I mean, 30%, I think, of college graduates have student loans, something along those lines. So probably 15% of them are, Republicans. So yeah, people are being handed something they don't want. They want to go back to the old way of how things were done with the Four of Cups. It's a huge, like, tearing down of the structure of the Department of Education and the student loan program. It's a huge change. And it hasn't been well thought out. It's one thing to make a change that has been well thought out. It's another thing just to make a sudden change. And the tower's about sudden changes, right? The lightning bolt hits the tower gets destroyed. People are jumping from the tower because they have no choice. It's not a good energy to live in this for this reading anyhow. The Knight of Wands is the hopes and fears. The hope is that there'll be messages coming forward explaining the damage that's being caused by this. If people start defaulting on their student loans, that's one thing. But if they're forced to pay them and then they start defaulting on their mortgages or their car payments or things that, they can't afford groceries, the choices that are going to have to be made are going to be really hard. So the hope is that these messages get out and that their outcome is there's a new beginning around finances, but it's not positive. The new beginning around finances is more money's going towards student loans than what people had allocated. I mean, this was set precedent way back with the George W. Bush presidency. He's the one that passed all these uh, income-based repayment programs. Well, I don't know that he started it, but they existed back then. The moon card, things coming to the surface that we can't quite see yet. And I think this is going to be these defaults. They haven't happened yet, but they're going to start to happen. And it's because of the immaturity of the administration and the administration purposely sabotaging college educated people because he thinks they voted against him, which is true. 60 some percent voted against him. But if you look at white college educated people, it was much more 50-50. Wish fulfillment for some, harsh judgment is coming for the administration. Circles of support and celebration, the three amigos of Putin, the felon, and Musk. Here's Russia, but they're about to experience heartache or heart problems because underneath that card's the card for the felon, the King of Pentacles. This is going to be a bigger debacle than people realize. I think it's a very underreported story. I hope I'm wrong, by the way. I don't want this to come true. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't think that people work, you know, there's a difference between 15% of your income or 10% of your income and then having to pay back a $60,000 loan in 10 years. It's a huge difference, right? Before you were allowed to pay your student loans back like for indefinitely. There was no end period to it. So you might take 30 years. Usually they're forgiven after 25, but I think that's been ended now as well. Okay. So I saw some images of big protests in front of the White House, in front of the Capitol, in front of state capitals as well, calling for resignations of people, in particular the felon. And people were just chanting, like, resign now, something along those lines. Will there be big protests calling for the felon to resign? Big protests calling for the felon to resign, including some Republicans. I feel like it happens in like around June. The protests are going to continue up until then, but they're going to get really big around June. That's like going to be the climax of them. Big protests demanding. See what the cards say. Yeah, because people are juggling too much. There's too much on everybody's plate money wise. It's going to lead to a summer of chaos for a lot of people. Now, of course, the poorest amongst us are the ones that are going to be affected the most. So if you have a little bit to give to the food pantries. The challenge again is people needing to make choices and not knowing which choices to make on how they go about their daily lives because they can't really plan financially because things are too fluctuating. Interest rates on credit cards, for example, might start to fluctuate more. So even your minimum payment on your credit card bill might suddenly be higher, even though you're not putting money on the credit card. These are choices people are going to have to make. It's all worried. People are all worried about money. In particular, the older generation's worried about their children and grandchildren's finances, even if their finances are maybe okay. The American dream is in the past. That's the way it feels. The wish fulfillment card, the Nine of Cups. It's in the past. It doesn't feel like you can get ahead right now. It might feel like you're stagnated, like you're neither getting ahead nor falling behind, but it doesn't feel like you can get ahead. That's in the past. More choice or the Three of Wands, it's inevitable. These protests are inevitable. It's just a matter of waiting for the ship to come in. And the protests, yes, they'll be about the economy. They'll also be about, his relationship with Putin. And I think Netanyahu too a little bit. We'll get into that in just a second. They're going to send a very fiery message. This is why, I think we'll see a lot of House Republicans say they're not running for reelection. I'll do a reading on that next. I have it in my notes, but I think it would be better for a different reading. People are also mad about Elon Musk having anything to do with the government whatsoever. I think he'll be gone by the time these things come about. There was an article in Politico that said behind closed doors, the felon's been saying that Musk will be gone in a month. So whether that happens or not, I mean, it's not like we should believe anything the felon says. So And it's not like we should believe they're going to follow the laws. We get strength. These protests will have strength. They'll be effective. They will result in changes. So it's like the resistance will win and we'll get changes as a result. Now, do I think that that means the felon resigns or Vance resigns or whoever's president at the time, which one of those two is, resigns? No, I don't think that. But uh, there will be calls if the felon's still around for him to resign. So there's going to be some fiery new leadership in the hopes and fears. This could be like a Cory Booker, a Chris Murphy, a J.B. Pritzker, somebody on the Democratic side who's really well spoken, who's maybe a little bit lesser known. It won't work for Gavin Newsom. It's not his fault of his own. It just won't work if it's Gavin Newsom. We can get into a reading on him later, but um, it's got to be somebody along those lines of a J.B. Pritzker, a Gretchen Whitmer, a Josh Shapiro, a governor from the upper Midwest, I think would be most effective. And this will be a crossroads for the country of whether we listen to the people or we don't listen to the people. But ultimately, it's the Eight of Cups, and people start to walk away from this administration. They'll stop supporting them. They'll stop supporting Republicans. We've already started to see that at the voting booths. But more importantly, Republicans are going to stop supporting this administration too. Now, they might do that by just not running for reelection in a district which basically is going to hand the seat to the Democrats. But that probably they were going to lose anyhow. We'll do a reading on that. And ultimately, the truth is what people want. Why are these tariffs going on? People want a new start. They just want a do-over. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of concern about repayments of loans and debts. This could be the student loans coming into effect, car payments, mortgages. There's a lot of worry about whether people are going to be able to afford their bills. Now, ultimately, I think things will get better quick enough to where there's not massive problems. There's going to be a lot of fighting. People were handed things they don't want, and now they just feel burdened. They're tired of the mis and disinformation, the lies and deceits with the devil card. They're just tired of it. And they want to be able to focus on their families. But right now they just feel left out in the cold, poorer than they were the month before. And it's a tower moment for everybody. It's, shocking structural changes have dire effects that they weren't seeing. But ultimately, we get the Sun card and justice. So things are going to be fine. It's going to be a painful time until, I'm thinking late summer, early fall. This has a little bit more upbeat, but it's better to be prepared. So if you go back to some of my earlier readings, I talked about this period of time coming and, stocking up on canned goods, that kind of things. If you have the means to do it, wouldn't be a bad thing. Okay, let's look at. So the felon had spoken to Netanyahu before the election, and I'm fairly confident that he spoke to Netanyahu about not signing a peace deal, not signing a ceasefire, not allowing humanitarian aid to get to Gaza. Is that going to become public? Are conversations between Netanyahu and the felon, do they become public? This is the White Lumen Tarot. Yeah, I see, it's an old school newspaper in the water. I'm sure they still print them, but I don't think most people get their news that way anymore. Something's going to come to light. Yeah, it's about repayments of loans and debts. In this case, it's about repaying Netanyahu for not signing a ceasefire and not allowing humanitarian aid in, because that allowed the narrative of, Harris is supporting genocide to come about. And then the social media platforms just took off with it. And you couldn't convince a young person with facts at all that she didn't, in fact, support genocide. Or at least the young people in our neighborhood were very convinced that she did. The the problem with it coming forward is it's going to cause a lot of heartache for a lot of people, because people are going to realize not only was this like interference in the election, but it also led to a lot more deaths than were necessary. Not that any death was necessary in Gaza, because they just continued. They didn't allow any humanitarian aid in for the longest of times. You get the Knight of Wands. I think this is who's bringing the message forward. Don't know who that is, but I think it'll be a journalist. We get the Two of Pentacles in the past. Deals with overseas money, transactions with overseas money. It doesn't necessarily have to be money. It can be things of value. That's in the past. It already happened. It'll be exposed. It'll cause people to walk away from both of them, Netanyahu and the felon. Yeah, and in the near future, we get victory, the Six of Wands. So ultimately, even though the story will be horrible and terribly emotional and devastating, it's a step in the right direction, truth to power sort of thing. It'll make us stronger. It'll make us realize how easily the system can be manipulated. If the Page of Swords, a spy in the camp, might be somebody on the campaign that already knows about this. It could even be somebody really close to him that breaks the story open. We get the Four of Wands. This is the voters and the hopes and fears. Republicans will fear the voters. The Democrats will hope the voters take heed of what's being said. We get fiery leadership with the Queen of Wands. This, I think, is again some Democratic leader coming forward, wanting to return to stability. So the fiery leader will be talking about returning to stability. As Mazie Hirono, the senator from Hawaii, said, these are not normal times. We want to return to normal times. It's going to take a while, but we'll get there. Ultimately, this leads to a new beginning. I think it leads to a new beginning because it leads to the downfall of Netanyahu and to the felon as well. With the Page of Wands, this is the fiery message coming forward. Might involve Musk as well with the Magician. And again, the overall energy just kind of for the year is the Six of Cups, caring about the next generation and worrying about them. So yeah, I think this is going to, I think it's already kind of known, like it's kind of the emperor has no clothes type thing. But I think there'll be really detailed stories and timelines of how things went down. Okay, so let's take a moment and look at the health of the felon's administration. It doesn't seem to be going well. James Carville has said it's already unwound. I'm not quite sure I agree that it's quite to that point, but it seems like it's heading that way. So we'll do a 9-card spread on this, then we'll clarify it with the Toth deck. So can you tell us about the health of the felon's administration? Tell us about the health. How healthy are they politically? How healthy are they physically? How healthy are they globally? Can you tell us about the strength? Strength might be a better word than health. Well, they're being judged. We get judgment. We get the Nine of Cups. This is like, it means wish fulfillment. The question is whose wishes are being fulfilled. I don't think it's the American people's wishes. We get the Death card. So this is the ending. We'll get all 9 cards out and we'll read them. Temperance, moderation. The Queen of Cups is at the center of the reading. Empathy. That's what people are desiring. The Knight of Cups, emotional messages being told, stories being shared. Heavy burdens, the Ten of Wands. This makes a lot of sense. The Seven of Pentacles, seeds being planted, ideas coming to thought, and a shocking new beginning. Okay. So judgment leads to people sharing their more emotional stories of how the administration's affecting them, which leads to a surprising new beginning, which I think is the rejection of the administration. And now heavy burdens with the Ten of Wands leads to emotional stories being told, which leads to the end of the administration as we know it. Now, whether they change course or the person in charge changes, which is what I think is going to happen. And the environment around, people are really in their heads thinking about how they are going to survive. They want to go back to, in the environment around is temperance. People want moderation. They're fine with emotional stories. It's just kind of overwhelming. And they're wondering who is winning, right? You'll be so tired of winning, you won't know what to do, right? It's what he kept saying. We're putting America first. It's not going to feel that way. So, yeah. And underneath, we get the Queen of Swords, logic, and a new reality around money, the Ace of Pentacles, and abuse of power with the Emperor. Also, this kind of looks like a Nazi salute. I'm not supposed to use that word, but kind of just does. And then we get the card for Russia, the Empress, people feeling isolated and alone, the Hermit card, and people wanting to move on with the Six of Swords. Sorry about the sun. So, yeah, people are tired already, and people are going to get more exhausted. Let's just clarify these. Can you clarify this at the top of the deck? So, judgment is met with success. So, the people judging the administration harshly will be successful in changing policy. The wish fulfillment will be understood not to be the people. They weren't trying to help the people with the King of Cups. The King of Cups is the Democrats. The wish fulfillment will be the Democrats. The Democrats will bring that about. Death will be highlighted with the sun, full illumination. We'll know all the facts when the end comes. Swiftness clarifies temperance, a return to moderation, and it'll be swift. The Eight of Wands. And we get the Knight of Wands, fiery messages to go along with the emotional stories. And we get new beginnings to go along with messages. And we get the Queen of Swords on top of the Ten of Wands. Burdens need to be replaced by logic. Logic is what's preventing us from feeling unburdened. And we get the Prince of Swords over the Seven of Pentacles. So there's a spy in the camp that's going to let everything out. And then we get the Chariot card. We all know what that means. Over the Ace of Cups. The Chariot energy is what's going to bring about this new beginning and the end of this administration. That will be the end for sure. And underneath we have the Hierophant, the Church, the Pope, government itself. So MAGA, the administration's not in a good spot. They know they're not in a good spot. We'll see a lot of distractions. Expect that. So anyhow, I appreciate you all. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back with another video soon.